Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary with a knife video for you. And today I've got kind of a different video. It'll be more of a discussion video, but I've got some knives to share with you that are probably a little more high-end. Most of these I think I've reviewed. There's the Southern Talc, Ferrum Forge Ferrex. All of these are knives I really like, but they are knives that lean a little toward the more expensive end of the spectrum. This is the Medford 187 DPT, drop point Tanto. We've got a Brose VR71. This is one of the more affordable ones on the table, but the carbon fiber VR71 would be very expensive, at least for me, you know. XM18, really wildly popular, especially, you know, in times past, these things were so popular, they were selling for, you know, another 50% of the actual retail price. I do have a Liangma Remedy here. And then I've got a couple other knives that I'll bring in a second just to make a point, okay? But, so what I want to talk about are, you know, these highly expensive knives, and and I know we could go much higher, okay? But to me, these are expensive knives. Now, that's the first point I want to make as we go through this discussion, is that expensive is kind of a relative term, okay? It depends on what your interest level is. It depends on what you're doing with whatever tool you're buying. And it depends on the kind of person that you are. What kind of personality do you have? Are you the kind of person who wants to have the one thing that no one else has, or wants to have the best of whatever it is we're talking about, okay? So, expensive, I need to point out, is a relative term, and I think most people can identify with that fact, all right? So for some people, they're gonna say, hey, I would never spend more than $25 on a knife. Some people are gonna say, no, I would never spend more than $125 on a knife. And some people are gonna say, I would never spend more than $2,500 on a knife. Well, okay, so for each of those people, obviously expensive is a term that they're going to understand differently. But to me, these are some more expensive knives, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about. Number one, I want to point out that these knives are not as popular, okay? I generally don't get as many views on a video that is about, let's say, the Ferrum Forge Ferrex, which I love, and I watch those kind of videos all the time. But, you know, the $50, you know, CRKT or the $85 Spyderco probably will get more views. Okay, that's fine. Now, let's carry on this discussion just a little bit further and bring up the point that often gets brought up, and I've seen this discussed both on my channel, on other people's channels. I've seen it discussed on Blade forums ad nauseum. But here is the Charade 306T, SCH 306T. Now this is a knife that when it was first came out, I think they sold for around 30 bucks. Now you can pick these up. A lot of places are clearing them out, and you can pick one up for like $15, $17, something like that, maybe $22. So this kind of begs the question, okay, so here's this $20 knife. Is it really that outperformed by this $350 knife or by this $450 knife? Like, what's the deal? Okay, so I think the obvious answer is not exactly, right? This is going to cut and do a lot of things pretty well, and in fact I think this is a pretty high value knife. But somebody may say, I like my Manix XL a lot better. And someone else may say, hey, you know, maybe they don't have the $25 Charade. Maybe they've got the $110 Manix, and they go, does your VR71 really cut that much better, twice as good, if it's about twice the price as my Manix? Not really. It's just different, okay? So the first thing that we want to say, so the two things that I want to say here, number one, expense is kind of a relative term depending on who you are and how much money you make and what way in which you're into that particular hobby. The other thing is expensive and, you know, functional versus high-end is something that comes into any category that you could think of, all right? Whether it be your clothing, do you buy the jeans from Walmart, or do you go to the mall and buy the $100 jeans, or do you go to, you know, some fashion boutique and buy the $500 jeans? All right, a perfect example of this, I remember going into a store on Bay Street in Toronto. I can't remember which store it was, but I remember being totally shocked by like a $450 pair of socks. And I'm like, what in the world? Who would pay $450 for a pair of socks? Now, probably the person who would says to me, who would pay $450 for a folding knife? Okay, and that's fine. A great example of this is guns. You know, does a Tavor really function twice as good as your average $1,000 AR-15? Does a SCAR function twice as good? There are a lot of, you know, if you think about handguns, you know, does the $600 Glock, is it really worth half as much as the $1,000, $1,500, $3,000 custom 1911? Right? Okay, so it doesn't, well, the point I'm making, guys, is that in all kinds of different areas, you have this manifestation of there's budget, there's, you know, somewhere in the middle, and usually that's a pretty big middle, and then there's super high end, right? And it doesn't matter, you could talk about cars, you could talk about watches, you could talk about clothing, you could talk about vacations, or virtually 100 other things that you guys could bring up. Haircuts would be a great example. I remember watching a TV show not that long ago, and somebody got criticized for their $25, who gets a $25 haircut? A haircut should cost $125, well, right? Okay, so I think you guys get what I'm saying with that. It's just one of those things that depends on what you're into, and depends on what income level you're at, how much money you have to spend, and how bad you want a particular thing, okay? Let's say that you currently own a Mannix and you just love your Mannix, but boy, you know, you really like a Southern Talk. Well, maybe the talc is a lot more than you'd normally spend on a knife, but the reality is, even for someone with a fairly modest income, if you set aside $50 a month or even $25 a month, you know, it's not that long before you've saved up enough to buy a talc, okay? And we do that with lots of other things that we need. I mean, I kind of need a snowblower right now, and it's going to be a bit of a hit. And I'm really debating, you know, I'm still a young guy. Maybe I can just muscle it through this winter and buy the snowblower next winter. And so I don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, yeah, I think you guys see where I'm going with this. Now, let's finally talk about some of the things that we do appreciate, some of the things that you get at that higher price point. All right. One of the things that is pretty much true of all the knives that I've shown you, whether it be the Talc, or the Hinderer, or the Ferex, okay, or the Remedy, the fit and finish, the level of quality, the level of sort of almost perfection is superior, okay? A knife that's been hand-fitted, precisely put together is going to be better. A knife like this, $25 knife, and I have all four of these. I have the 301, the 303 or 4, the 306, and 307, 308, whatever. There's a few different models. I've got all of them, and I have done a little research, and guess what? The quality, the consistency is not there. You may get one that doesn't lock up well, or where the finish has some missing parts to it. And that's just because at that price point, you can't afford to have a high degree of quality control. Where at these price points, yeah, someone is examining each knife before it goes out the door in a fair level of detail. Okay, this is another knife, and I'm going to use this knife just because I'm giving in to Greg Medford's marketing just a little bit. You know, over and over again, he just harps on the fact that these are handmade by Americans in America. Okay, great. But being handmade and being hand fit is something that some people are looking for. Okay, does it mean that my Mannix, because it is largely assembled by machines, is no good? Yeah, it doesn't mean that at all. It does mean that there's going to be a higher degree of accuracy, that it's more likely that the screws are torqued just to the right level. It's more likely that the blade is going to be centered and that you're not going to have lockup issues or things like that. Okay, and so there is something to be said for handwork and hand finishing. I especially like, and some people have complained, but Lots of people have complained that the satin finish on Brose blades is not that great because it's done by hand. I actually think it adds a level of character, okay? The fact that these are hand polished really makes each one kind of interesting and kind of unique. Now I will say this is a newer Brose blade and the satin finish has improved to be at a higher level of consistency, okay? But having hand polished some knife blades myself, I know that getting that perfect consistency throughout is really, really tough, okay? So I understand that those slight differences are understandable. Okay, so the handwork, the level of fit and finish, and there are, by the way, there are production knives that have very high levels of fit and finish. Higher end materials, you know, S35VN or carbon fiber or 3D machining. This is, the Remedy has 3D machined titanium and it is amazingly comfortable in hand. Now, can you find production knives like the ZT-0300 or 0560 that have that, or 0200? Yep, you can. And it makes a difference, guys. I will say that, you know, here's another example of a machined handle, and it does make a difference in hand, especially over something like this. Now, both these are very comfortable, okay, but this one just does fit your hand better. There's something about that 3D machined finish. Even if it's just on the Cold Steel Swift or the Cold Steel Ultimate Hunter, it does feel really nice in hand. So blade finishes are something you might be interested in. Now, I will say when it comes to blade finishes, I kind of watch what I'm buying, because if I spend a large amount of money on a knife, I don't want a blade finish that's going to get marked up really, really easily. I'd prefer a stone-washed finish. Now, the other thing is, I will say, stonewash finishes are a little overdone right now. It feels like every knife that comes out from certain companies, you just know that it's going to have a stonewash finish. And I'm getting a little tired of it. I've got tons of stonewash. I love it. You know, here's the Remedy again. Beautiful, beautiful stonewash finish. I really like the way it looks. But probably the next couple of knives I buy are not going to have it, because you got to admit, something like that beautiful satin does look really, really awesome. Okay, but hand finishes, really well fit parts, really good materials are all things that we look for. Let me say this, you also get a level of uniqueness, some pride of ownership, sometimes some exclusivity. You know, a lot of knives that are in that, you know, higher price range, $300 to $600, are done in limited runs. So maybe there's only 200 out there, maybe 100. I know the Tulks have been done in runs of 100. And so that's pretty cool. You know that there's not a lot of people out there that have the same knife as you, which does demand a premium, okay? So all of those, I think, are legitimate reasons to be interested in spending more money. Notice, by the way, that I haven't said at any time that these knives are going to outcut other knives. They're not going to outperform in certain practical aspects every other knife that's out there, but there are going to be some things that are superior. Usually fit and finish is really good. Usually you know, attention to detail is very good. Hand assembly is always very good. So there are some things that you're paying for. Now, I don't think anyone's arguing, and certainly I'm not arguing here, that you're going to get better performance. Probably maximum performance, you know, around $100 is where you're pretty much, maybe a little above that. But at a Para 2 or, you know, a Manix or different knives like that, you're pretty much hitting the limit of paying for extra quality and extra performance. Beyond that, you're paying for other things like what we've been talking about. So to kind of wrap all of this up, let me just say this. I like knives. I like all knives, okay? I'm gonna keep liking the $100 knives. I'm gonna keep liking the $200 knives. I'm gonna keep liking the $20 knives. I'm gonna keep liking the $1,000 knives. I'll probably never own one, but I'm gonna still like them, okay? And I hope you do too. The main point of this video is to say, hey, buy what you like, and just because you, let's put it this way, I love to watch Jim Skeleton's videos, or GTKI, or Pio Leong, or, you know, some other guys who have these crazy, you know, high-end customs or semi-customs that, yeah, I'm not going to have a collection like that. But it doesn't mean that I can't watch the videos and really enjoy them, and I do, okay? So, buy what you enjoy, buy what you'll use, and enjoy even those things. You know, I think all of us have hobbies or interests that, you know, I'm not going to go out and buy a $5,000 gun, but if someone else wants to and make a video about it, hey, have at it. I'll watch the video so that I can kind of get some experience of that and some enjoyment out of it and some entertainment value. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Here's what I'd like to hear from you guys. What is the knife that you paid the least for? Okay, maybe it was a yard sale or flea market find. Maybe it was just a great clear out sale somewhere, but you paid a very low price and you feel like you've gotten tons of use out of it and tons of utility out of it. On the other hand, what's a knife that maybe you paid the most for? Maybe you've paid $500 or $1,000 for a knife that to me seems really, really high, but you don't regret it for a second and you think it's worth every single penny. I'd love to hear that too. All right, there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and we will talk to you soon.